This is another interesting session, and I'm very thankful that Mizoram Lit Fest and Mart and Mami have got this, because this is we were having a talk about this. Very nice to meet LB. That the illustration is now becoming, is slowly kind of finding its way into Lit Fest, because illustrations, books, children's books. Children's book is becoming very big, and then once you talk children's books, illustration automatically comes, because to just have text for a child would be difficult to get his attention. Now, illustrating a book itself has become something which is not, before you would just draw whatever was written in the story, but now, especially with we've got Canato over here, and we're talking about LV's work also. The illustrators are getting more, what shall we say, more conscious. They're not just illustrating the story, but they're getting more conscious about how their readers would connect the illustration to the text. You see, so what we're going to do over here is, I know everyone must be very tired. We will try and make it interesting for you, and then as much as we can. We've got two very fine illustrators. LV, I'm meeting him for the first time, and frankly, I tried to Google him. He's like a ninja on the internet. Very little information, but look at the amount of work he's done. He showed me all this, and he kept taking things out. We were sitting and chatting in that little coffee corner, and he said, "No, actually, I don't know why I'm invited. I'm just simple. I like drawing." And he kept taking out one book after the next. Like, the amount of work is done. I've just done this book. Then Kanata and everything. Oh, this is very nice. I've also done the writing. He writes stories, and now we find he's written a script, and one of his scripts was made into a movie, where they can do all kinds of hats. So slowly we find out LB is wearing so many hats, and as we got to know him better, LV is like, he was made for illustrating and, writing. His father writes, his mom has a printing house. So like, he's customized, tailor-made to write. And his work is, look at this. This is like totally international quality manga, okay? Even the style is quite manga style. And these are, I think, school for students, no? For students, so these are, I'm sure you all must be aware of it. It's, so I'm going to enjoy reading whatever I can. Thankfully, these are in English, so we will enjoy that. So at some point, we will not I have not prepared questions, although I will filter a few questions which Mart had asked, no? So that's LV, and we get to know more about LV and his process of how he starts with this. Canato is another very good friend, very fine illustrator. Canato Jimo. He's a NID product from Ahmedabad, and till very recently he was the art director for Pratham Books. He was art director for Pratham Books, and you can see his work online also. So we'll let that speak for his talent. But very interestingly, the coincidence against it, like Canato and I sketched for the same author. There was this wiggly tooth, and that's the connect we have. So I'd like to start this session with LV, since we want to get to know more about LV. If you could just let us know, well, that's what everyone asks. Where did your, the art, what came first, the writing or this is a bit like the chicken and egg story, but did the writing come first, or did the sketching, illustration come first? What came first for you?
No, the matter of what comes first, the writing or the illustration, I think it's the feeling. The feeling that one day you wake up and have to make sense of the world you're living. So that feeling is there. Now you have to describe that feeling. You can do it with words, you can do it with drawing, and eventually the feeling comes into shape, in the form of words or drawings. and eventually, hopefully, it will make sense. That is my answer. The feeling comes first, and what comes next, either the words or the illustration, that depends on my mood of the day.
I have a visual idea first, right? So the way the book is going to look, how you're going to turn the page, or what colors to use, I think that comes first. So the few books that I have written and illustrated, I think it's the visuals that come to me first.
So this one, not this particular book, if you can see this is done traditional, you know. This is with actual pen and paper and erasers and pencil, like we know, you know, when you have drawing classes. So this is you said gouache and watercolors.
Watercolors and color pencils, yeah.
Very and this is like without text. This is again something you don't need text for the story to move forward. And then this is again purely, this is digital, no? And digital over here, Canato's work, I was liking this. See this, all these perspectives he's got. Where's that page? Now this one is really nice. This is a view from the top, no? This is a view from the top. The characters out here, all right? This is from the top of the trees, and then the next thing is the view is from the bottom. No? From the bottom you look up towards the trees. Now this is, I think, one of the best things about illustrations is this flexibility, no? That you can change your point of view. LV has got so much of detail in his work. You know, he uses, and also what I like about his style is he uses traditional as well as digital. He's become a master with it, and sometimes uses AI also, and very thing. So how did you get to this transition?
From digital, you mean? Traditional to digital. Well, traditionally, you just pick up a pencil and paper and you draw, and then when you have to reproduce that work, if you do it digitally, it gets much easier, faster and quicker. So traditional art is good, it's great, it's amazing. But then again, for reproduction and for such times when you need to do a lot of work in a short period of time, the digital part helps. So to answer your question, when did the transition happen, I cannot say when exactly, but I think it's out of necessity and a deadline that I must fulfill. So that's it.
So which one do you find more convenient, traditional or digital?
In terms of convenience, digital is convenient. You cannot argue with that. But in terms of how much fun I'm having, like the feeling of your pen or pencil or crayons on the paper, the jagged lines, the constant kneading of the sharpening of the pencils and the erasers, nothing beats that. It's pure, it's fun, and it's what it's all about.
Very therapeutic also. Now the younger kids will probably find it a little crazy, but remember when you get a new book, we used to sniff the book, you know, because that smell of that new book, you know, and we are cursing these little kids, and they're sniffing dendrite and, you know, stuff like that. What about you? You are sniffing books, you know, that was also there. So for illustrators, that is part of it, preparing the pencil, the paper, you know, and then like he's saying, to hear that scratch of the pencil when you're sketching on paper, there's something which iPad was trying to do, you know, to make that paper screensaver, isn't it? What about for you, Canato, for you? Is traditional like therapeutic?
I agree with whatever you have said, but also there is a certain sense of I use a lot of digital now. So one thing is the convenience, but also being able to there's so many things that you can do, right? You can create textures, you can also of course when you're creating, getting your hands dirty and, you know, just having that tactile element to it, I think that journey itself is also wonderful in your creation. But also I'm equally into digital as well, because you also can, there's so many things that you can do. So I am both sides.
the process of from sketching to something like this, no? To publishing, let's say. That's for all writers also. I write poetry. After that, what? I've poured my heart into poetry. Now, what do I do with this poem? The next thing is you have more poems, and then you print a book. For illustration, besides commissioned work, how difficult is it to kind of say like what LV has done?
I think there are a lot of writers here as well, and it is equally challenging as for an illustrator as it is for an author. So I work in the space where I art direct. Basically, the way commissioning editors get authors, I go and get illustrators. And I also try my best to get talents from this part of the country. So, but it's very difficult, right? But yeah, so what we do is, let's say, I'm talking from a very visual illustrator point of view. So when I'm creating a book, I'm looking for, let's say I'm doing a book based in Mizoram, and I would definitely want to get someone who can illustrate, who knows about the place, who will be able to bring that authenticity, that contextual element to it. So I would definitely want to start with someone who is from Mizoram, or who is aware of, or who would also do the due diligence in terms of research, in terms of going, right? So that's one aspect. And but I also would not want to pick someone just because, right? Oh, they're not good, but they're from Mizoram, so I'll pick them. So that would be totally unfair. So I think when we are looking for an illustrator, I don't know if there are any illustrators here, if you have friends. When I'm looking for someone, definitely one skill and talent, right? So being able to look at a work and say, okay, this can translate into visual storytelling, right? Right now, people may think, why is a literature festival talking about illustrations? But there is so much emphasis on visual literacy now, right? So we're looking at children, we're looking at young readers, and these are the ones who are, in a way, we are also creating all readers. It starts with children. So I feel like I am a big children's literature fan and also promoter. And anyway, coming back, so visual literacy, right? So someone who is able to bring that into in their work. And what we do is then once somebody is hired, there's a lot of storyboarding. You have to send me roughs, and I'm also looking at how it should be. Look at the visual, look at the layout, the composition, when the text comes in, where should the text go, what color should be the background so the text is legible, and all those things involved. So people think the children's book is easy, but it's actually quite challenging. And but it is it's a wonderful journey, but it can be very challenging.
You don't have to be an illustrator, but if you have friends who are illustrating and want to, now you know how you can take Canato's number. Now you know which way to direct them. If they are into illustrations, they can tell this is how, and give him his number. So he'd be the person to call. No, so you can take Canato's number, and not just for the fact that you're single. There's something else. All right. For LV, when we're talking about sketching for children, for illustrating for children, no? Is there a difference when you are illustrating for adults? Do you have a different style when you want to say a commissioned work for schools, no? Or when you're illustrating for the readership, not the audience?
What style do I have a difference in style as according to the audience? Yes, I do. For example, the maturity in the details, it doesn't matter too much, but some details, they matter, like the choice of colors you use, the choice of hair, skin color, what they wear. They matters because in some cases you illustrate a person according to their culture, according to the tribe, according to their timeline. So in such a case, it matters. But generally, for a modern audience, it doesn't matter too much. Like in my comic book, One was for, like you said, for school students, so they wear school uniforms. And in how they present themselves, in how they talk, and wear their hair, I have to assert to them a model school student and what that entails visually. So a school student should be looking in such a way. And for other instances, like some illustration I do for myself, I do for fun, I can get wild with it. The style, the stuff, that things don't really matter. So, yes, to answer your question, yes, there is a difference. But commission work, you have to be disciplined. Yeah, whatever they ask me to. So, that is one thing. But if I do it for fun, the style doesn't really exist. It's what I feel like at the time.
Then you're doing it for your own relaxation kind of thing. This is what we are talking about, but we were having a nice chat out there under the trees. In terms of, and the Northeast is so rich with our weaves, no? With our weaves. Like, for example, when he was doing that book, the Naga, based in Nagaland, he's done all the intricate, the shawls, identifying each clan. These are things which we would, be aware of. This is one of the plus points. Now, if LV draws, from Mizoram, when he's drawing the Puan and all that stuff, with all those intricate details, he wouldn't know exactly how the detail goes. And I was telling them about this friend in Sikkim who he wanted dragons etched on a very expensive glass in his office. And he got it done in Delhi. And what came to his office from Delhi was a dragon which looked like a cross between a lizard and a crocodile, because they had absolutely no idea what a dragon looks like, So now he had somebody from there, then you know what the dragon looks like. Now, talking about illustrating for children and adults, I'll just put in a small word. I've just finished one book on Ganju Lama. I don't know if you know of Ganju Lama, this guy from Sikkim who won the Victoria Cross during World War, and he fought in Burma and he blew up 3 tanks. So the British government, they gave him a Victoria Cross. So we did the story on him, Ganju Lama. It's aimed for children from 10 years and above. Now this story is based on war, and this guy went and blew up tanks. So I mean, like, there's a lot of violence. Now, we did not want to, we consciously said, we have to talk about him, but let us not glorify the war, let's not glorify violence. So we focused more on not so much as in him blowing up the tanks, but more on his sense of duty, that he did what he did. So does this, do you think this is important when you're thinking, are you very conscious about, that the stuff you are doing for children, it might, because they're very impressionable, isn't it? Canato, you want to take that?
I think context is very, very important, especially when it comes to children. I mean, equally important in adults, writing as it is in children. I think earlier our ma'am, they were also talking about authenticity in what we write, right? So even me as a creator, coming from a certain space, definitely I'm looking at my lived experiences, my lived realities, right? I do not want to borrow from something that I feel is aspirational, but I want it to come from an authentic space. And as a creator, and also being in the publishing space, there's a big responsibility of how I represent a certain thing. So it could be somewhere, I could be telling my story, or I could be getting someone to create a story from a certain space, and we try to make sure that it is authentic, right? And it is also coming from the right space. I want to give you an example. I got an intern to make a book. She was from Manipur, and she's a shy girl. And then she said, I want to do something about shyness. And the book is about this girl who is very shy, and the title was called Shy Thoi Thoi. Then we realized that when we put Shy Thoi Thoi, we were actually already making when you say Shy Thoi Thoi, it's already kind of making the person, tagging them as shy, right? As if it is some sort of problem, right? So what we, yeah, something negative. So what we did is we made it Toy Toy feels shy. So we're also looking not just from how beautifully it sounds as a title, but we're also looking at all those things. This is just an example, right? So when we talk about war, or when we talk about actually even poverty and regions, like sometimes we also self-exoticize, right? We also try to make our, when we start talking about stories from the Northeast, Mizoram or Nagaland, we want to put all these beautiful dresses and costumes and festivals, and that becomes the only lens through which people look at us, and we also look at ourselves. So I think this self-exoticization, difficult coming out from that space that we've always looked at, right? We're always looking at from mythology and folk tales, whereas we live just vibrant everyday lives, right? The experience that we have every day is usually forgotten. So I think, yes, so being able to come back and see, when looking at a child as a reader, as a creator, as a publisher, being sensitive to all this, right? Who is telling the story? Who is being shown? All those becomes very important, yeah. And what is being shown as well, yeah. That is also kind of challenging the stereotypes we have of a father. Always when we make children's book, the father is in his study and reading a newspaper, and the mother is cooking. And I think the way we break stereotypes is also by showing those. So when a child looks at it, you're also looking at, hey, the father can also be cooking. The father can also be not just sitting and giving orders, right? So I think that visually we can also challenge stereotypes like that, yeah.
I like what Canato's book, he's got that one I just showed you, the traditional one. He's got a small cat in the corner. And if you notice, the cat keeps changing the hats on its head, So this is something which keeps the attention of the reader, the person who's in, it keeps them saying what is going to happen next, that sense of, expectation. Yeah. So that is there. Now, one thing which I think we've not really tapped so much is this very rich thing of, treasure house of folktales we've got. The entire Northeast, all seven sisters and that one new brother. We've got such rich stories, folktales. LV, have you thought about, I see your stories are mostly very contemporary and modern. Have you thought about folktales, of converting them into graphic novel kind of a...
I have thought about it, but ultimately I decided to come up with my own. It doesn't necessarily make it better, but it's 100% my own, so that is personal to me. But it's a good thought, it's a good idea. Traditional stories explored using illustration is a good medium for students, maybe for us, for the next generation. Yes, I think you've given me, I think, an idea for the next project.
Because now very few of us have the phone. What else? You're there on the phone all the time, and so that oral tradition is gone. So, and oral tradition was one of the best ways of taking our stories, our folk tales, and all our traditions would go down the oral way, from father to son, that kind of story. Now, when that is not there, then probably the graphic novel is the next thing. I mean, so I was just thinking that it might be a good way to get into that kind of thing. Canato, what about you?
A little word of, for me, the thing is, if you represent a certain people with just a certain set of stories, that's where the danger is, I feel. So every time we set out to write or to go approach a publishing house, we're always, yes, let's do folktales, and which is great. I mean, I have nothing against folktales and folklores, but then, as I was saying earlier, I think that's in most of the times that's the only lens we look ourselves, right? And we always talk about the glory of our oral traditions and folktales, but is that the only way to look at our stories, right? So yes, if we do, we must do it well. Now every writer that's coming out, I mean, I'm sorry if somebody has written on folk tales and things like that, but most, even in Nagaland, most of these new writers, they just want to start with folk tales and folklores, and I feel that's a very cop out kind of situation, very lazy kind of situation where you already have and you're just tapping into this thing, and we start talking about the glory of oral traditions, and I feel like it's sometimes there's a little mismatch, and we don't challenge ourselves also, right? So as much as I agree with you, I would also do this with caution, because I feel like there is this danger of, again, still being in that same, boxing ourselves in the same kind of story and same kind of narrative. So yeah.
And also maybe there's a good perspective. Also, like every time you tell the story, the tiger gets bigger and bigger. So we have more and more versions until maybe the final version is so far from the original one. No?
So if we have people who can retell stories, great. But we also need people who will write about contemporary lives, write about contemporary kids, right? Not just about tigers, men becoming tigers, but also about what you were experiencing with your parents in right now, maybe in the family, and something that a child can also relate to, right? So I think they should coexist. Yeah.
Something the child can relate to and say, oh yes, I know this stuff, you know. And it's like, the generation gap. So you kind of telling them stories from a generation, they kind of find it difficult to, if it's only for posterity. Yeah. So now I think we are kind of towards the end of our story, because there's only so much you can talk about illustration without actually sitting down and illustrating. After some time, we say, give us a pencil and paper, and then we'll tell you what we are talking about. You should be illustrating, not talking about illustrating. So LV, very quickly, you got anything on anything you're working on just now?
Like the same book which you have shown for school students. One was that, and the other is my own, which will never maybe not see the light of day, because when you're working for your own, it never gets any closure. You have something to add to it every time you open it. So maybe eventually, hopefully someday I will publish it, but that is that one thing also.
So I'm consulting with some publishing houses. Design, art direction bit is there, but I also want to give a little more time and create my own stories, write and illustrate my own books. So that's the plan for the year. Yeah.
Anybody who wants to ask questions of these two fine gentlemen?
Writer as well as an illustrator, and you also, if I'm not wrong, you also illustrate other writers' work, right? So how different is the process of illustrating your own work and illustrating other writers' work, and which one do you enjoy more? And a question for LV. I've known LV since we were kids. How do you usually illustrate emotions? Do you like leaving space for the audience to imagine, or do you give importance to details?
When you are a visual person, in most of the times, traditionally, you have the text and then you get someone to illustrate it, right? Text always takes precedence, but when a visual, somebody like in my space, when you're writing and illustrating, there is this beautiful marriage of text and image coming together. So sometimes you're like, I don't need text for this, I will put the visuals here. Or I need text for this, and so I will do something for the visuals, right? But that's happening here together, right? It's happening. But when I work with an author and I'm illustrating, they also have a different vision, and I also have a different vision, and this coming together sometimes can be a little challenging, but also sometimes can be very fulfilling as well. But yeah, I feel me creating my own and trying to concoct something, both visual and text together in my head, I think that's very exciting for me. It can be challenging when you're working with authors, especially when they are demanding or they have something very different in their heads, and what I create visually does not match. So sometimes that can be challenging, but it also is. I mean, there are some projects that you just have to do it. So sometimes you don't like it, but that's what they want, so you kind of do it. So I prefer doing it, yeah, my own book. Yes, it pays the bills. So
How do I illustrate emotions? Was that it? I think illustrating and writing have the similarity in that how do I write emotion and how do I illustrate emotion? Like, for example, there is this word that comes to my mind called it's motifs, motifs, I think. It's when a writer tries to write emotion using the environment, like the color of the sky, maybe the curtains, the floor, the time of the day. Those motifs, they come into action to tell a story, and that story reflects the emotion of the character. So that was how a writer would do it. That was how I would write it. Not just how the person was feeling, but what happens within that room also. So as such, if I am to illustrate an emotion, I would use those elements, but in another medium, a medium in drawing, like perspective, like the angle of the character, like the choice of colors. So if I'm to draw a person lonely, like a child, a boy lost in a big world, the person would be much smaller as compared to the background. So there is this one image that stuck to my mind in that in that animation movie called Up. There was this scene at the beginning of the movie when the character, an old man, lost his wife, and he was literally lost in his world. He was happy before, now he is sad. He was all over the world in his mind. He and his wife were to travel the world, but that dream was gone. So the interesting thing that the maker of the movie did was, there was this scene. The old man was there, sitting alone, and the world was big. The person was small. So if I am to illustrate a lost boy who is lost in a big world, I would use such use such elements like the perspective, the choice of colors. I would make him much smaller. And otherwise, if I'm to make a happy person, all of that would come into place. It's like visually representing those words using the tools you have as an illustrator, like those perspective, those choice of colors, all those things.
I'm sure you guys, have you seen Mulan, the Disney Mulan, about that, the Chinese, not the movie, not the feature film, the Disney one with that little dragon, no? And then I remember I had that movie, and then in fact this friend of mine, Guru, was reading, he was saying, I said, this is a very nice movie, watch Mulan. He said, this is cartoon, this is for kids, I'm not going to watch. I just watched it, and then he watched it, and towards the end when Mulan comes back home, and the father is like all broken up, and I said, my daughter, our man is saying, who had just said that, this is a cartoon movie for kids. He's like, this is like quite tough, and he's got tears running out of his eyes, and this, and he kept, kind of dismissing it as a cartoon, but suddenly the cartoon is hitting him where it really hurts. So that's the power of what Canato said, the visuals, And that's something with our illustrators. Both are very talented, very powerful illustrators, but also with great power comes great responsibility. So all that. So more power to your pens. LV, nice meeting you. I hope you guys enjoyed yourselves.